Okay, Wendy, can I just confirm that the meeting is now being recorded and the live stream is on? Okay, thank you. So I have pleasure in opening the council meeting of the 17th September 2024 at 6 p.m. and welcome all those in attendance. The City of Vincent would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and we pay our respects to elders past and present. And we also acknowledge that the City of Vincent has a role working towards reconciliation and justice for First Nations people. Now, I've got one apology for tonight, and that's Councillor Ashley Wallace, noting that everybody else here is in attendance. Now, can I please get an indication from those people in the public gallery? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak and address the meeting? Okay, fantastic. If you haven't been to a council meeting before, please ask when you come forward, can you please state your name and the suburb in which you reside, and also which agenda item you wish to speak to. And we do time to 3 minutes. So if you, for any reason, you don't want to appear on the live stream, please just tell us and we can turn it off so that only your voice is heard. And what's going to happen is that a summary of your remarks are going to be put in the minutes. Okay, so who would like to come forward and address the meeting first, please? Yep, just come forward, please. Thank you. You just need to say your name and you can say where you work in this instance.
My name's Dean Turner. I'm the CEO of East Perth Football Club at 246 Vincent Street in Leederville. And also I'm on behalf of representing Peter Capes as well as the CEO of Subiaco Football Club. Tonight on our agenda, there was agenda item 6.3, which is around a decision to require further value seeding into Leederville Oval. My notes tonight, I really just wanted to speak a little bit about where we've got to today, and I wanted to acknowledge the new Mayor, Alison, and this council for the work that's been going on behind the scenes. We started some 12 years ago, and it's great to see Ron Alexander in the room, who set the agenda for Leederville Oval to be the centre of excellence. We've seemed to have lost our way in many ways, but fortunately over the last many years, we've been working together with the council and in particular Dave McClellan, who's taken on, and we've now seeded for the venue a grant from the state government of $3.8 million. That's been announced, which has been fantastic. We've also worked very closely with the Football Commission and the AFL. Unusual to get money out of the AFL, but we managed to get a combination of $500,000 for the Oval around that. We received a state government night program grant of $230,000, and also both clubs, Subiaco and the East Perth Football Club, have committed to put in at least $170,000 towards the balance of trying to make up a gap. The total funding is around 5.2 for the works that we're looking to undertake, which is the lighting upgrade and a turf upgrade. What does that mean for the Oval? It means that the Oval will now be seen as probably the best located and probably number one in the state as a Tier 2 AFL venue. What does that mean? David McClellan's already started in conjunction with Alison. And we've secured the next AFLW match between West Coast and Fremantle. Now, it depends which your supporter you are. I don't know which way to go with that. But if you're a West Coast supporter like I am, we're on the way up. But that's fantastic from the Oval, and I suppose it's fantastic from the business community as well, because we hope to attract over 7,000 to 8,000 people, which obviously means the local area will become heavily used. I wanted to thank, in that funding of 5.2, the major funding is obviously the state government, and that was the work undertaken by our president, Bronte Howson, and Alison Zaman, who worked very hard with Rita Saviotti to secure that grant. And again, my thanks especially to Alison for getting involved and taking that on. What does it really mean for Leederville? Being the best located Tier 2 AFL venue, for matches. We expect to attract a lot of games here. By the nature of West Coast agreement with their agreement with the City of Vic Park, they can only play so many games at that venue. So hopefully, there's me 3 minutes gone. Thank you again for the 3 minutes. I've been at the football club too long, haven't I? I thought I was going to get more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good luck to the Mighty Royals as they go into the grand final this weekend. Who else would like to address the meeting, please? Okay, so I do ask, just come up when you're ready to speak, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Richard Pappas, Managing Director of Celsius Property Group, and I'd like to speak to Agenda Item 9.1, 367 and 369 Fitzgerald Street, North Perth, proposed commercial development, viewing tower. For the minutes, I live in Scarborough and I'm a part owner of 5 properties in the North Perth Town Centre, not including the subject site. As you'd be aware, Alma Square consists of over 100 studio, 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom apartments and over 1,500 square metres of ground floor retail and food and beverage. With a value of more than 100 million, it is the largest mixed-use project to ever be undertaken in North Perth. As part of securing finance, pre-sales are required for the development and a very substantial marketing and advertising program has been pulled together, including the viewing tower, sales gallery, on-site signage, and soon a significant marketing campaign. Prior to commencing a broad marketing campaign, we wanted to afford North Perth locals the opportunity to express their interest, and I can confirm we've had over 110 downloads of the QR code based on our current signage and over 250 inquiries to date. We are aware of some antisocial behaviour around North Perth and more specifically over the site, including graffiti attacks on our signage, squatting by one homeless person and one reported instance of someone from the public accessing the viewing tower without permission. To this end, I can confirm the viewing tower perimeter is fully secured and locked at all times. We have attended the houses personally and arranged to have them additionally secured and boarded up so that they are unable to be accessed by squatters. We've applied an anti-graffiti coating to all signage and are taking steps to have any graffiti removed as soon as possible. We're in the process of installing CCTV to the site to deter further damage. We're also looking into the possibility of expediting the demolition of the site's vacant and derelict buildings, which are currently contingent on the remaining tenants vacating by November. Once our display gallery opens, we will have staff on site daily, which we are confident will provide passive surveillance. We anticipate having a daily presence starting around November 1st. With respect to this application, the City wrote to 200 neighbours directly and I understand received 21 objections, or approximately 10.5%. This viewing tower is an essential part of our marketing campaign, and I encourage you to support your planning officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Hey, who would like to address the meeting next?
Leslie Flory, 79 Sass Ave, Mount Hawthorn. Good evening, Mayor Zaman and councillors. I'm here tonight to raise a significant concern regarding the UV lining of stormwater pipes on private properties, particularly regarding its financial and structural implications, and also 10.1. I'll start with 10.1. You mentioned in the stormwater policy, connection policy changes that you're working with stakeholders, including owners where land is subject to flooding and drainage easements. I am part of this stakeholder and I have not been consulted. I have not had any communication and this heavily affects me. Since the stormwater pipe on my property was UV lined on the 10th of April 2024, I'd like to know whether there has been any other properties from the 11th of April 2024 until this date, the 17th of September 2024, where stormwater pipes have also been relined. The cost of relining the stormwater pipe on my property amounted to $57,000 and there was nothing wrong with my pipe. Given that there may be over 40 plus properties where stormwater pipes run through private land, as confirmed by the City of Vincent, the total financial impact of relining these pipes could reach an estimated 2.2 million. That's 57,000 by 40 properties. I strongly urge the council members to investigate this matter and place it before the Internal Audit Committee for a thorough investigation. This is a serious issue which may allegedly involve performance deficiencies and potential mismanagement of ratepayers' funds and requires the Internal Audit Committee's urgent attention. Right. So, compaction. There is a significant financial and structural risk if these properties have pipes that lack proper compaction, especially if they are UV lined by the City of Vincent without addressing compaction beforehand. Should compaction occur post UV lining, for example, a resident may wish to develop, build or make extensions to their home and the City of Vincent has not compacted around the stormwater pipe, is the City of Vincent going to take responsibility for any damage to the pipe because they have not followed City of Vincent engineering policies and procedures? Several additional questions regarding the City of Vincent administration. I'd like to know in what month and year was the City of Vincent administration reception cashier area moved to the City of Vincent library? I would like to know the total cost incurred in relocating the administration reception cashier area to the library. I'd like to know what were the total costs spent to move the administration reception cashier area back to the main City of Vincent administration building. And I appreciate all my comments to be noted in the minutes of the meeting and a detailed response to my concerns. Thank you for your time.
Hey, would anyone else like to address the meeting, please?
Hello, my name's Neil Stacey and I live in North Perth. Thanks for listening to us today. Look, I've been a community member of North Perth for about 35 plus years. Look, I'm appealing to the councillors to actually vote down this tower that we're addressing. It's 9.1 on the agenda. You've been advised by the planning department and told that you can't vote against this. I've actually checked with other councillors and they actually can do that. They can actually vote against what they're advised to do. Being the lived experience that we've had to deal with homeless people being squatting in the house next door. My daughter was followed twice by a homeless person living in the property because it wasn't secured. We've actually seen people smoking cones up on the top of the tower because it's not secured properly. There were people having a picnic up there. This tower is just really overlooking everybody's property. It hasn't been secured properly. Basically, you know, I'm just basically asking you to vote against it. I think the community have already won enough from this developer already, and this just is another example of what's been going on with this property at the moment. I could basically go through a whole heap of facts and figures to actually explain that to you. You were given a number by the developer saying how many submissions came in. It was 87.5% people voted against this tower in those submissions. And the community are really questioning why they go through this process of submissions to basically not be listened to. This is an opportunity for councillors to actually do the right thing by the community at the moment, and we've probably already had enough. So thank you for your time.
Thanks. You've just come forward.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me your time. My name is Emily Bird. I live in North Perth. I'm addressing Agenda 9.1. It's the viewing tower at 367 to 369 Fitzgerald Street. I just have one question. I understand that the planning application for the tower is unchanged from the structure that's already in existence. As I understand it, the City of Vincent planning policy requires that a structure of this type should be provided with shielding to prevent downward overlooking onto neighbouring residential homes. Can anyone explain why the planning department has not required the applicant to install downward shielding in order to protect the privacy of local residents who live directly underneath the tower? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to address the meeting?
Hi, thanks for your time. My name's Lee Jimby. I live in North Perth and I'm addressing point 9.3, the draft Auckland Street Character Area Guidelines. Just a brief comment around some of the dialogue on the council briefing meeting. And just as a landowner for these and hearing what is happening on the street, I'd just like to pass a comment that it's really important that if these guidelines are approved by council and then proceed to the next steps, that we take all landowners on the journey of what these actually mean, what it will mean for their properties, and ensure that they have the correct input. The initial survey responses only had 14 responses with 40 landowners, and I'm really keen to see that greater street participation in what those guidelines might mean for them.
Would anyone else like to come forward?
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. Ben Doyle, Planning Solutions in St George's Terrace, Perth. Here in relation to item 9.1, which is the temporary viewing platform in North Perth. So as I said, this application relates to a temporary viewing platform on the site that was approved for the development of 104 apartments plus shops and cafes and restaurants and offices. As Richard outlined earlier, the viewing platform is necessary as part of the marketing and sales process for this development to be implemented. The tower, as you would, I'm sure, know, has been there for a few months now already under the exemption provided by Council's policy. We're seeking approval for that temporary structure to remain on site until June of next year through the marketing and sales campaign. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm always conscious of shouting into a microphone. Thank you. You have before you a 36-page report written by the city's independent planning officers. The report is comprehensive, it is thorough, it is the result of a diligent assessment, and it is objective. It's an objective assessment, as I say, against the town planning framework as it applies to this development. I trust it contains all the information you require to make an informed decision tonight. The application was also discussed at the briefing session last week, and I note there were a couple of questions asked and they were responded to in those briefing notes that are available with the agenda as well. Now, we've heard tonight from a couple of people with objections. And look, that's entirely understandable. This is an area that is undergoing change. It is undergoing a transition from a relatively quiet suburb to a activity centre with high density development. And that's been planned for many years by state and local government through their various strategies. And look, it's no secret, and we don't hide from the fact that there were a number of objections received at the time to the substantive development. And so I'm sure there remain some strong feelings in the area in regard to the development of this site. The officer report sets out objectively the assessment of this application against the planning framework. And that is the orderly and proper process for making a decision on this application. The report points out, and I know you don't need me to tell you, that clause 67 sets out 28 different matters that council must consider in reaching a decision. And of those 28 matters, only one of them is submissions. There's a whole range of other things that you need to consider, and you need to weigh those and balance those against each other and reach your decision. The officer recommendation assesses them against those matters, and it concludes that this proposal is a temporary structure. Almost done. If you can give me 20 seconds. Thank you. It's a temporary structure that will not have any long-term impact on the streetscape or the amenity of the area. It will not, in fact, it doesn't require an application for up to 3 months. It's an acceptable height, and I will point out it's 47 metres from the nearest residence, and I would say that is why it doesn't have downward screens to prevent visual looking. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, do we have the next speaker, please?
Good evening, Mayor, Councillors. My name is Morris Ryan. I live at 7 Baker Avenue, Highgate. Regarding item number 9.2, over the trial period, the studio's been working with performances there, and I'd just like to say that I don't have any problem at all with it. We haven't had any complaints. All the people are walking up and down the side of our place on the side of the studio entrance. There'd be no trouble with antisocial behaviour or parking or anything else, and I'd ask councillors to vote in favour of it. Thank you.
Next speaker, please. If people are wanting to speak, please do come forward.
Thank you, councillors and mayors. I'm Michael Mann. I live up at Quinns Rocks, but I have an affinity to living in Highgate, where I was reared as a young fella.
Which item are you speaking to?
Oh, sorry, 9.2. The Centre Stage Studios has been designed as a recording studio and a little auditorium, as I think everybody here has seen. And as a result, sound, because of recording studio, sound cannot enter it. Otherwise, you can't record. If you can't enter, sound can't enter. It also can't leave. So any performance going on inside the building, you can't hear it outside. I've been attending at least one of every concert that has been held there, and it's a small, intimate environment. You have a foyer that is small. People go in there before it starts. You cannot enter without a ticket. You cannot enter half an hour until at least half an hour before the performance commences. So any alcohol that is available, you have half an hour to drink that. People who take advantage of that drink it carefully and slowly. They don't want to miss out on a good performance. And leaving the venue at the beginning, coming and going from this venue is never. I've been early, I've been late, I've left it on time. As soon as the performance is finished, I've left. Been one of the last to leave, and at no stage in all of these times have I come across anybody who is under the influence of alcohol or rowdy, making a lot of noise. So I just think that I would hope the council would vote in favour of this proposal. It's been going on for quite a while, and as I said, I have attended most of all of the performances at least once, and I've never seen any antisocial behaviour of any description. Thank you very much.
Hey, does anyone else wish to address the council?
My name is Elizabeth Roberts. I live in North Perth, and I wish to strongly object to agenda item 9.2. My grandmother has lived next door to the property longer than I have been alive. The applicant is a skilled musician whose performances are of a very high calibre, but with respect, that is simply not a relevant consideration in determining this application. The only relevant considerations are whether a substantial commercial enterprise is suitable in a residential zone and whether the applicant's conduct in relation to the now expired approval has been lawful. I have serious concerns about the precedent this application sets. I live in North Perth, and my street is very similar to Baker Ave. It's very closely located to major streets, commercial properties, and Charles Boyard Reserve. If an application like this is approved, what stops my neighbour from being granted a similar approval? How would my 2-year-old and my soon-to-be newborn sleep when 100 people exit my neighbour's property at 11 p.m. every Friday and Saturday night, 3 weekends in each month? The music studio may be soundproofed, but there is simply no way to quietly exit 100 people, particularly after they've had a few drinks. There are also problems with the notice given to residents. The way it sets out musical events, musical performance sessions, and one-off musical sessions is highly misleading. Further, there is a substantial error in the notice, where it excludes Saturday from the operational times of the business. This means residents have been misled about the full extent of the application. To be frank, I cannot comprehend how this application was ever initially approved. It clearly does not meet the objectives listed for a residential zone. If you are not minded to deny the amendments in full, I would ask that you either defer your determination until the issues raised by my grandmother prior to this meeting in relation to liquor law compliance have been completely investigated and the notice to residents is corrected, or that you exercise caution in your approval in the following manner. 1. Do not grant the approval in perpetuity. The applicant entertains a certain type of clientele, but he will not be the proprietor in perpetuity. The development approval will not end when the property is leased or sold. The next proprietor may have substantially different clientele that could be highly problematic to local residents and the broader Vincent community. 2. Decrease the limits for patrons and performances. The neighbourhood has fantastic amenities for families such as Birdwood Square, Hyde Park, Highgate Primary School, and proximity to the CBD and Beaufort Street Town Centre. This is why people choose to live in Vincent. A substantial commercial enterprise and significant disruption for 3 weekends every month, particularly late at night, means that there will be no place for families in this neighbourhood. I also note that while the development was initially approved in 2019, the approval only operated provisionally for a period of 18 months. So it is not like the business has been lawfully operating for many years. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to address the meeting?
My name is Frances Thomas. I reside at 11 Baker Avenue, Perth. Addressing 9.2. Simply, a so-called music studio that's really a concert venue should have never been approved in a residential zone. It is in the middle of a residential street. It doesn't improve residential amenity. It ruins it, especially at times when most residents are at home on weekends and in evenings. It should be located in a commercial or mixed-use zone. The noise from arrivals and departure vastly exceeds any overflow of noise from commercial venues across the park, such as the Brisbane Hotel or nearby restaurants. The patrons of the concert events are supposed to directly leave after performances. So do many. But many don't. Once the doors from the theatre open after a performance, patrons spill out into Mr. Mundir's backyard, drinking and socialising, often until midnight. He has completely misrepresented the real use and extent of the use of his premises and should not be rewarded for his deception. The increase of 80 people at any one time to this residence on a weekly is completely unacceptable, as it is the fact that he hires the venue out to unrelated conferences. In one instance, there was one for architects that one of my grandchildren pointed out to me. Though not all events being held there are run or managed by the homeowner. Under the requested approval, he can run a small conference venue for 80 people every day. With respect to the use, and council advertisement said Monday to Friday to this use, but your agenda says Monday to Saturday. He justifies this overreach by saying that he might like to record a small orchestra with 80 people, but that's really getting a weekday conference centre approved by stealth, in addition to his late night concert events. Other home musicians are happy to have 1 or 2 children at a time. He wants 80 adults at a time. Baker Avenue can be a busy by day with school children, pickups and drop-offs, and busy with sporting essentials. you know that when you buy a house opposite the park. But what's occurring in the backyard of a house next to me is a full-on commercial use, much more than that. I ask you, who of you would want this next door to you or your mother? It is reasonable in a residential zone.
Could you please,
Next to your house, you despite the precaution. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Just that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nick Mondia. I live at 225 Lake Street in Perth. I'm here for Agenda 9.2. Ladies and gentlemen of the Council, I thank you very much for your time tonight. I'm Nunzio's brother, and I've supported Nunzio from the very start of this project up until now, and will always support this project into the future. Part of the support I give is being staff on the event days and nights. In particular, making sure that all outside noise and parking restrictions are adhered to on event days or event nights. Another very important part of my responsibility on the event day or night is to make sure that all surrounding neighbours that are willing to talk to you are in contact and do not have a problem, whether it be noise, parking, whatever it may be, as per our management plan. The City of Vincent previously voted in favour of the studio, allowing us the privilege of an 18-month probation period, which was very successful and made a lot of our patrons very happy and eager to return. Our patrons range from brain surgeons to judges to lawyers to doctors to very successful musicians, engineers, so on and so on. People who are very good in their field, have a great passion for music, and who want to come and relax in an atmosphere where they can come sit down at a very close range and enjoy what they love, which is music. We adhered strictly to our management plan, resulting in no formal complaints or informal complaints. The trial demonstrated our commitment to being very responsible operators and ensuring that the studio ran smoothly and, very importantly, in harmony with the community. The Council has complied a 96-page report which covers everything, and in regards to the studio. And we are very proud to be able to achieve a positive recommendation from the Council, to whom we thank for all their hard work. We have met every requirement, followed all regulations, and are ready with open arms to be a permanent part of this exciting future modern planning. We remain fully committed to addressing any concerns that may arise during future events, be proactive in resolving any of the issues that could affect any of the community. In conclusion, I would like to say that we are proud to live in the City of Vincent, been born and bred there and lived there for over 50 years. However, Vincent is an ever-evolving place, especially down towards the Vincent side, which really meets up with the City of Perth. And so Vincent is evolving, and it's well known for its vibrancy and community spirit. Whether you live on Lake Street like I do, it's time to wrap it up. No problems. I'd just like to say we put a lot of hard work in. The studio has developed its own character, and you put the hard work in, and as they say, you should get rewarded. So please vote it positively. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Sorry. Good evening. My name is Jane, and I live in Perth 6000. I'm here to talk about item 9.2. I am volunteer Center Style Recording Studios, where I help with social media and administrative tasks. And I believe Center Style gives important benefit to our community, and I would like to explain a few key points. First, there is a clear evidence of strong public interest and growing demand for center stage. Over the last 12 months, More than 10,500 people visited our website. In the last 90 days, our social media reach has grown by 800%, now reaching 54,000 people. This reflects the community's strong interest in the event we host. Audience feedback highlights the venue's success. A former vice chancellor of La Trobe University and Australian author recently attended a show and remarked, "What a wonderful gig. If you have a mailing list, I would love to be on it." Similarly, a former multimedia resource officer at ECU University praised the performance as an awesome musicality with clarity, depth, tonal authenticity, and sonic spatiality like we never ever heard before, emphasizing the venue's ability to deliver high quality, memorable experiences. Second, Center Stage is a vital platform for helping young performers grow by giving them a quality space to perform. We support the growth of emerging artists while also driving increased foot traffic to local businesses and restaurants. Center Stage has also collaborated with City of Vincent on significant projects to produce a COVID conversation documentary which reached 95,000 views on social media platforms. This project is now part of City's growing local history collection, preserving valuable community stories for future generations to explore. Finally, Center Stage used the universal language of music to bring people together and support meaningful causes, from fundraising for sick children through telephone to support Alzheimer's research. In conclusion, I urge the Council to support Center Stage in becoming a permanent recording and live performance venue. Center Stage is committed to helping the community, and it has shown its economic and cultural value. By supporting the studio, the City of Vincent can help Center Stage grow and benefit by whole community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to item 9.2. I'm Claire Mann from Quinns Rocks. I've got family connections to Highgate. I enjoy attending a variety of cultural events, including all types of musical performances. Centre Stage Recording Studio is an excellent venue within the suburb, which means audiences do not have to go to the larger city venues with the added hassle of parking and where the crowds are often seated far away from the performers. We always park away from Baker Avenue and have on occasions used public transport to attend the performances. In recent years, Centre Stage Recording Studio has been the venue for a variety of musical events, providing employment for local and international musicians, including instrumentalists, vocalists, and for their support staff. The venue was perfect for the recording and filming of COVID conversations, of which I was part, and for the final presentation to the City of Vincent staff. Centre Stage Recording Studio is an asset within the City of Vincent cultural scene, providing a specially curated venue with a structure built to acoustic specifications, so the performances are only heard within the studio space. Importantly, the venue is known internationally and Australia-wide through visitors, performers, sales of CDs, and followers through the internet platforms. Tickets are only sold online via a ticketing agency. The audience numbers are restricted by the size of the venue and the amenities provided. The building and amenities are always spotless and well maintained. The front of house staff professionally manage the entrance to 9 Baker Avenue and the associated foyer area. The audience is welcome to the performing area, ensuring everyone is seated and aware of the exit signs. Staff monitor the door during the performances in case there is a need for an audience member to briefly leave the concert. The upstairs area is also monitored throughout the performances. On the many occasions I have attended the Centre Stage recording studio for musical events, I've never witnessed drunk or noisy behaviour or heard loud offensive language, either before or after the performances. In fact, we have often been among the last to leave the premises. Once out on Baker Avenue after an evening performance at Centre Stage Recording Studio, we have on occasions heard very loud music coming across Birdwood Square from the Brisbane Hotel. There's also associated noise when the Nib Stadium is in use and the ongoing sirens. Yep, these sounds are not to be confused with the musical events at Centre Stage Recording Studio and the audiences arriving and leaving the venue. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Nunzio Mondia. I live in the Perth 6000 area and would like to speak on item 9.2. Centre Stage aligns perfectly with the City of Vincent's priorities for arts and culture. We've upheld full compliance, managed the venue with professionalism and received no complaints, not one, throughout the entire trial period. This shows how well Centre Stage has integrated into the community, enhancing the area without disruption. I urge the Council to recognise the strong community support and trust our planning team and their positive recommendation. The decision honours the community's vision from the earlier Imagine Vincent survey to create a vibrant hub for creativity and connection. At this stage, I'd like to thank all the councillors for taking the time to visit Centre Stage recording studios and our professional planning department for their guidance and proactive approach in ensuring that we are on track with regards to the city's vision statement. And more importantly, listen to the voice of the community as a whole going forward. We know that in 10, 15 years' time, our demographics are changing. We'll be dealing with more 30 to 40-year-olds, and they want a lot of new things into the area. I'd like to highlight the support of my colleague Hank B. Marvin, who couldn't be here tonight, a globally renowned guitarist whose album recorded at Abbey Road Studios in the UK have sold in the millions. He states, it's an excellent venue and I feel compelled to write and register my support for the studio to continue operating as a live performance venue beyond its trial period. Several points I would like for you to consider. Community arts asset. I believe the studio is a valuable arts asset in the community and it provides a creative outlet for musicians, artists and others through recording and live performance opportunities. Superb acoustics. With regards to compliance and management, I believe from what I have personally experienced that Centre Stage meets all the compliance criteria. This has been evident during our concerts where the venue has been professionally operated and managed, and audience members have agreed with this observation. And I ask you to refer to the full letter version that has been submitted. From the Northbridge Common Group, many of the attendees have never visited the area, and this can also help to prompt a positive view of an area which is often unfairly stigmatised. It's a community space that brings a wholesome crowd into our area. And again, there's the full letter version for your perusal. And then commentary from our social media pages, and we can go on, but I'll just point out 3 from our last concert. Bought my tickets right away on the 31st of August. Can't wait to see you guys again. As a first timer, I thoroughly enjoyed the great music and fabulous venue. Looking forward to another concert. Another brilliant show. Thank you one and all. I can't wait for the next show in this stunning venue. And that was from Annie Micklejohn, who was my Year 5 teacher at Highgate Primary. So really, finally, I'd just like to say thank you to all our supporters, whether they're here or in thought, and for your thoughtful consideration. We are committed to continuous improvement, and we welcome all feedback. My doors are always open, and I want everyone to get along and to come and enjoy the studio. And one last thing, I noticed Jay Nardu's not there. Oh, right. Okay. I was going to say there's still hope for the Jay Nardu big band from last time, but thank you.
Okay, we're back on track. Thanks very much for that. Okay, who would like to come and address the meeting now, please? Thank you, and thank you for your patience.
Good evening, Dudley Meyer, Highgate. The first item I'd like to speak to is item 10.1, the stormwater policy. I mentioned in an email to council members that I don't think there's been valid justification for imposing a greater burden on commercial developments, saying that residential developments should have a lower burden because they, and I'm quoting, the greater opportunity to manage stormwater on site because of the green space and light just doesn't cut it. I think council has got to stop accepting weak reasoning and start to insist on some intellectual rigour in these areas. And also, you better make sure that we as the community are going to get value before you spend $800,000 on a drainage truck. For your interest, community members who made submissions on this policy were not informed that the item is on this agenda as required by the policy. That's all on that. A couple of three things that were in the agenda. On page 258 of the agenda, it states that money for the legal over-lightning was not carried forward because, and this is the quote, uncertainty about the project. It's hard to believe that the proposal came out of the blue. The fact that the tender was released on the 10th of July, beginning of the financial year, plus the city was getting a quote to upgrade the transformer and lights seems to put paid to that idea. I may be wrong, but it looks like someone just forgot. On page 21 of the briefing notes, it says the installation of the necessary transformer upgrade will be delayed because Western Power sent emails to the wrong email address, except it's Western Power's fault. But surely the Vincent project manager should have thought it strange that they were not getting any response from Western Power. It just doesn't seem reasonable to blame it all on Western Power. To me, it just looks like a failure of project management. On page 9 of the agenda, you'll see some answers to the questions I asked about the start dates for the underground power in the Highgate Perth area where I live. It's slipped by a year and it's not the first slip. The change, like previous slippages, has been at Vincent's instigation and not Western Power's. And the reason given is that the staff want to minimise disruption to residents and to manage cash flow. I do not understand how you can minimise disruption to residents. We only live in one area. The fact that some other area is being developed at the same time is not going to disrupt us anymore. And all of this is done in the background without council oversight. So I'd ask council members to get involved, look after our interests and don't leave it to the staff. And finally, on 9.2 Baker Avenue, I think the recording studio and the whole concept is a great concept. It's just in the wrong place. It's not about the music that people have said about the soundproofing. It's about the patrons. One of the speakers said there was an increase in foot traffic. That's the point the neighbours are trying to make. So I think you have to consider it if you were in their place. How would you like 100 people leaving your neighbour's property at 11 p.m. on a regular basis? And it's also not about this guy, it's about the next guy. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address the meeting? No problem. All right. Well, in that case, what is going to happen is that all the items that have been spoken on are going to be brought forward on the agenda. They'll be discussed first, and as there's no further questions or comments, I close public question time at 6:50. Okay. Governance Manager, can you please confirm if any written statements were received?
I confirm we did not receive any written statements.
Okay, I confirm that I haven't received any requests for leave of absence. Are there any councillors here who wish to apply for a future leave of absence? Okay, the answer to that is no. So I'm just going to confirm that we have received no petitions, and we also have no one down to give any deputations. So then we move to the confirmation of minutes, and that is that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 20th of August 2024 be confirmed. Do we have a mover for that? That's moved Councillor Warner. Do we have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Hallett. All those in favour? Okay, that's passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so I just wanted to make some comments about what is happening, the next steps with the trial, which is now permanent, to lower the speed limits in our suburban areas down to 40 kilometres per hour. It has now been rolled out, as I've said. It's no longer a trial. It is now the standard, and there has been a few residents that were concerned about some of the placage of some of the signs, but we've spoken to Main Roads about that, who were responsible for putting in the signs, and in some instances it's been moved, but yeah, basically just hopefully that's all sorted out now. I also have had quite a bit of contact from residents who are concerned about enforcement of the 40 kilometre an hour limit. Like, they're really happy to see it, but they just want to see it actually being followed. And I suppose my response to that is to remember that issues of speeding is an issue with the police. What I would like residents to be mindful of is that if they think there is a certain area where routinely 40 kilometres an hour is not being followed, you can of course get in contact with the council so that we can bring that to the attention of the police, but otherwise I do encourage you to contact the police directly to see whether they'd be prepared to set up some sort of speed trap, if you like, to see if it really is a routine problem. But at the moment, the council's focused on trying to educate people about the reduced speed limit and to encourage people to think about slowing down the speed. The other thing is, I do want to assure residents that the 40 kilometres an hour limit is only one of the strategies that's being employed to try to slow down our streets. We will still be looking at other traffic calming measures, as per priority and as per the available budget. Noting that every time the council puts in traffic calming measures at the behest of local residents, there'll always be other local residents that will get upset that we've put in traffic calming measures. But nevertheless, we persevere because we recognise we want to make sure that we're slowing down traffic on our streets. One of the things I'm concerned about is to make sure that we are continuing our advocacy to get more consistency about the lowered speed limits across Vincent. I'm concerned about areas like Vincent Street, where we've got 3 different speed limits. So you've got 60 kilometres an hour that's outside Betty Park, but then you've got 40 kilometres an hour outside Hyde Park, and then that little strip between William Street and Beaufort Street is 50 kilometres an hour. And it really does need to, particularly between William Street and Beaufort Street, it needs to be 40 kilometres an hour consistent as people are leaving Hyde Park or going towards Hyde Park, because it's actually on a crest and it's highly built up residential area. It doesn't make sense to have suddenly an increase of 10 kilometres an hour in that stretch. So we are continuing our advocacy around that. I'm also keen to look at advocacy to slow down other roads that are feeder roads but are becoming more and more congested. And my particular concern is about Lord Street. So Lord Street's currently 60 kilometres an hour, and if you go from all the way from Walcott all the way down to Newcastle, that is becoming heavily congested with increased density, and it is a very, very difficult road to cross, particularly for children who are going to Highgate Primary School. And if you think about game days at HBS Stadium, there is a constant flow of pedestrian traffic trying to cross over there. Good luck trying to cross over there with a pram, as Councillor Wolf can attest. It is really not a safe one at all. And one of the reasons I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet about it is because within the course of 4 weeks, both of my sons were in car accidents on Lord Street, and in both instances the cars were totaled. So it is actually something that has affected me personally, but it is a problem. So we also need to look at what's happening with the town centres, and I'm conscious that particularly areas like North Perth and others, that we need to have the strategies to slow the traffic down. And I know there's a call for more electronic signage, and so that's something that we're calling on main roads to actually consider along those corridors as well. We do need to make sure we are slowing down our streets. It's better for humans, for cyclists, for people who are on e-scooters, for our dogs, and we need to make sure we're doing what we can to minimise the rat running, or ideally prevent it entirely, and also make sure we are diverting traffic onto those very big main roads where people can more readily get around. So a huge priority for us, and I'm really pleased that the Perth Inner City Mayor's Group has decided that they are also going to be picking up on the 40 kilometre slowing limits in some of their areas as well, because this will become the norm for inner city councils. So I just thought I'd give that quick update. Acting CEO, can you please read any declarations of interest you have received?
Thank you, Mayor. We have 4 declarations of interest. The first is from Councillor Suzanne Warner, who's declared an impartiality interest in item 9.2. The extent of her interest is that she is acquainted with the applicant, has helped him arrange events in the space, and has attended events in the space. Yourself, Mayor Alison Zamon, has declared an impartiality interest in item 10.3. The extent of her interest is that she is a member of the East Perth Football Club. Likewise, you have also declared an impartiality interest in item 10.4 for the same reasons. And in Councillor Ron Alexander has declared a financial interest in respect to item 9.4, outcomes of advertising and adoption of local planning policy development guidelines for heritage places. The extent of his interest is that his home is on the municipal heritage inventory. Councillor Alexander is not seeking approval to participate in the debate or remain in the chamber to vote on the matter.
Are there any other conflicts of interest which any other councillor needs to declare or wishes to declare? All right, so items which have been the subject of a question or a comment from members of the public are 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, 10.1, 10.3 and 10.4. And those items which require an absolute majority which have not already been identified just then, 12.1, and the item where a council member has declared a financial proximity interest is 9.4. So, Councillor Warner, which items do you wish to speak to in addition to those? No. Okay, Councillor LaFontaine, Councillor Castle, Councillor Greer, Councillor Alexander, Councillor Wolf.
5.4, please. And do we need somebody to put 13.1 down as well?
I was going to put 13.1, but that's fine. Okay, and Councillor...
No, not for me, just 5.4.
That's all right, 5.4. Councillor Hallett. And I will put down 13.1. 9.4. I see. You mean 9.4. You've gone from the briefing session. 9.4. Okay. All right. All right, sorry. Okay. Yes.
Confirming the following items will be moved en bloc: 10.2, 11.1, 11.2, 11.3 and 12.2.
Okay, do we have a mover for anyone that those matters be moved on block? Councillor Castle, seconded by Councillor Wolf. So all those in favour? Okay, that's carried by consensus. So the first item is 10.3 Sullivan Logistics Oval Sports floodlighting upgrade. Do I have a mover for this proposal? I'm happy to move it. Do I have a seconder for the proposal? I can, but I'm being told I can't. Can someone please move this proposal? So moved Councillor Castle, seconded Councillor LaFontaine. Councillor Castle, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. Not much to say. I'm supportive of the officer recommendation.
Councillor LaFontaine?
No comment. Thanks.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? I do. I'm very excited about this. I think it'll be amazing to do up the Leaderville Oval, and I'm really looking forward to this being the first step in turning this into the premier Tier 2 venue for WAFL and also for AFLW. It's an extraordinary opportunity, and it'll be an absolute game changer in terms of that oval, but also the flow-on effects for businesses in the Leaderville Town Centre will be absolutely fantastic. So this is going to mean that we can have night games out there, and it's going to be broadcast quality. So really excited about this, and I want to thank everyone who's been involved with this. Okay, so does anyone else wish to speak to this? Okay, Councillor Castle, do you wish to say anything in conclusion? Okay, so I'm going to move that. All those in favour? Okay, that's passed by everyone. Thank you very much. So because that was part of the second part was Sullivan Logistics Oval playing surface redevelopment. Does anyone wish to move this proposal? Moved by Councillor Castle, seconded by Councillor Hallett. Councillor Castle, do you wish to say anything?
Supportive of the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hallett, do you wish to say anything? Does anyone else wish to say anything? Okay, I'm really excited about this one as well. I'm hoping that we are going to really prioritise looking after the turf though. So that means that when we are considering which sort of events are going to be held out at Sullivan Logistics, aka Leaderville Oval, we need to make sure with this sort of investment that we are doing everything we can to protect the turf, because once you've stuffed up the turf, you've really, really blown your investment. And so it's going to be very, very important that we respect this as being a premier sporting oval. So I think that was what I wanted to say. Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Castle? I'm going to put the proposal. All those in favour? Okay, that is passed by everyone. Thank you very much. Okay, so now I move to 9.1, numbers 367 and 369 Fitzgerald Street, North Perth, proposed commercial development. Okay, so that's the viewing tower and associated fencing. Okay, does anyone wish to move this proposal? Is anyone going to move it? I can't move from the chair. Moved Councillor Wolf, seconded Councillor Castle. Councillor Wolf, do you wish to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm supportive of the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Castle? I'm going to put the proposal. All those in favour? Okay, that is passed by everyone. Thank you very much. So because that was part of the second part was Sullivan Logistics Oval playing surface redevelopment. Does anyone wish to move this proposal? Moved Councillor Castle, seconded Councillor Castle. Councillor Wolf, do you wish to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to all the many residents who've been in touch about this item over the course of the week. I wanted to start by asking a question, please. We've heard from a resident about a City of Vincent requirement for the viewing platform to have a privacy screening shielding in place. Are we able to just briefly confirm, please, whether or not that's a requirement? Thanks.
Sure. Through you, Ms. Amon. So the shielding, I understand to be in reference to the privacy screening. So the city's planning exemption policy, when considering the exemption for the viewing platform, requires us to consider whether the viewing platform has been either appropriately located or screened to consider overlooking impacts to adjacent or nearby residential properties. So there isn't a specific condition or requirement for screening to be provided under that exemption. There's consideration of where the tower is actually located as to whether it needs screening or not. So at the time that the building permit was lodged for the proposed viewing platform, we undertook that assessment. Because the viewing platform is located to the southeastern portion of the development site, it's well separated by 46.7 metres to the nearest residential property. And that was considered a sufficient distance to reduce overlooking impacts from people scaling the tower. So we also note that while there isn't any deemed to comply vision setback standards for this type of structure, the residential design codes do provide a general base or guidance in terms of code of vision setbacks for unenclosed raised habitable spaces, and that's at a maximum of 7.5 metres. So it's a general base that we can use as a little bit of a guide while not a requirement, noting that, as I said, there's a 46.7 metre setback, which greatly exceeds that. And also just considering that the setbacks to the western boundary, which is to the adjoining residential properties, the deemed to comply standard is 12.5 metres as measured to the midpoint of the right-of-way, and they greatly exceed that at 44.7 metres. So in summary, having regard to the location of the structure and the quite significant setback, visual privacy screening was not considered necessary and it was not required to meet those relevant exemptions, or in considering the extension of time for that approval for another 9 months, not in perpetuity.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. I thought it might be useful tonight to talk through our approach as councillors to this application. So as councillors, we need to view this application on its merits and against the many elements of the planning framework. And I really, really feel so deeply for residents and what you've been through over the last few years regarding this development in terms of the impact that it will have on your homes, on your families and on your lives. It's something that I've thought about a lot well before coming to council, and the impact and the history of that journey is certainly not lost on me at all. What we need to do today is to assess this application alone and in the context of the planning framework. And that decision needs to take into account the community consultation feedback, as well as other elements of the planning framework that have been assessed and are contained in the report. But our decision here needs to be a quasi-judicial one that will stand up to scrutiny if assessed or reassessed by the State Administrative Tribunal. So on the balance of all of the factors, particularly in light of the temporary nature of the structure and the conditions imposed to reduce impact, I do support the officer's recommendation. I would like to speak specifically to antisocial behaviour. I was really pleased to see in the recommendations in the report that there are recommendations, a number there that go to antisocial behaviour and that issue. So things like the fencing and visitation being by appointment. And I was really glad to see that these conditions have been drafted as needing to be implemented to the satisfaction of the city. What we're hearing, though, is that there is still a little bit of a gap between what's in the briefing note in terms of no ongoing antisocial behaviour issues and the issues that we're hearing from the community. So things like trespassing, people having picnics on the structure and smoking on the structure. If this application is approved tonight, what it will do is it will establish a formal process for those issues to be addressed via the city. So I thank the manager who said that administration can circulate details to residents about how to make a complaint for breaches of conditions via this process that can then be investigated by the city through the perspective of the planning conditions or via the city's health team. I also note that we've heard from the developers about plans to install security cameras and expedite demolition of the vacant buildings where there has been a lot of antisocial behaviour reported. So I hope that Celsius will act swiftly to make those changes, which are not only in their own interests, but definitely in terms of the community's interest, an important step for safety and addressing the antisocial behaviour.
Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Wolfe, too, for laying that out. You've covered a lot of the questions and the points that I was thinking of as well. I don't think it's any surprise to anyone here that I hear and understand the concerns of the community and well understand the history and the context of this application. I sat on the JDAP when this original application was heard, and unfortunately in that case I was the only councillor representation on the day, and it's something that as a councillor here I've dealt with both the applicant and the community for a long period of time to hear both sides and to understand and hear the community's concern. But as Councillor Wolfe said, what we're considering today is not that application. This is not the same as the original one, and it's also not an opportunity to re-prosecute that original application. We have to look at what is before us, knowing that there is already an approval in place to build the development on the site. I think given that, it is not inappropriate for the applicant to want to seek a way to ensure that their development is viable. And this is a mechanism that is quite widely used and has a process with the city for both exempt approvals for a very short period of time and for an extension for a temporary period of time. What I see before me is an application that is approvable and, more importantly, I think not defendable if it was refused at the SAT. That's something that is really important for us to take into account. It is important to the integrity of decision making at Vincent and at all councils. It's not something that we take lightly or blindly follow the recommendations. But, and of course, it is open to council to disagree with the officer recommendation. We've done that many times. But I'm also very cognizant of what I can and can't take into account when exercising that quasi-judicial powers, and what is relevant and not relevant to a planning decision, and also what is in the best interest of the city as a whole. While I am very sympathetic to the concerns of the community, and I understand that this tower and the development that will come will have a major impact on their lives and their homes, I just don't see that there is sufficient grounds for us to refuse this application today. I'm really pleased to see that the applicant is taking the concerns of the community seriously and have measures that they have considered, particularly for the antisocial behaviour. That is a big concern, and I think it will be some time before this property is active. And so that is definitely something that needs to be addressed across the life of this viewing platform and until the development actually commences. So I look forward to seeing that, and I look forward to the city being able to monitor the operations of that and monitor any complaints that are received to ensure that those impacts are reduced as much as possible.
Councillor Fontaine.
Thank you, Mayor Zamon. Thank you for those comments. I think I would agree with Councillor Wolf and Councillor Castle on this one. I do feel aggrieved on behalf of the residents who are impacted by this. And I understand this as an issue with the process for reasons which are detailed in the report. I do have reservations regarding the assumed approval for this application, but considering that this viewing platform is already in place and this is a time-limited application with an intended marketing purpose, I understand and agree with the officer recommendation to approve with the conditions on time limit, use and car parking.
Would anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Ms. Mon, and I just want to thank Councillor Wolf for summarising so clearly. I have found this decision quite difficult. I think that the neighbours that we've heard from and looking directly, like realistically, people are going to go up there and be able to see into people's back gardens, and I think that is a significant concern. And I think with the history of this project and where it is disappointing that we've got to use such a tower to promote the selling of those apartments. I think from my conversations with people around North Perth, everybody wants Fitzgerald Street to be a place where we can have more density. People are supportive of sensible development in that area. And I am struggling with this one because it is not that proxy decision for the development that has come before. It is our job to look through the range of considerations for this structure, and on balancing that structure, it is very difficult for me to say that structure shouldn't be there. And I think that's really tough. And I think the only thing that's sticking there for me, that this is a temporary structure and it is for that time limited period. So just wanted to add, and thank you again, Councillor Wolf, for summarising that so clearly and acknowledging it is a very difficult decision, I feel, that we're in this moment.
Councillor Warner.
Thank you. Every time we get asked to review an element of this project, I can't help but feel terribly uneasy. It's a development that is really stirring strong emotions amongst many in the community, including some good friends of mine. I genuinely want to contribute to creating a neighbourhood that everyone feels proud to be a part of. However, we have to acknowledge the facts. The project has been approved, and what we're being asked tonight is not about approving the project. I understand that every step forward with this project is going to provoke further public outcry, but the reality is this is happening, and yes, it will impact traffic, and yes, it will impact on neighbouring houses. But that decision has been taken, and we need to manage its effects now. Setting aside the emotions surrounding the situation, I focused on the planning aspects that require discretion in this case. The project is designed to be a secure space intended for use during specific times by a maximum of 3 people at once, including a staff member. All necessary measures should be taken to ensure that privacy and security is upheld. If an urgent issue arises, I urge the developer to act promptly and with understanding and compassion. And I appreciate the steps that have been put in place already and have been planned, such as installing CCTV, securing vacant properties, and maintaining on-site staffing. Antisocial behaviour is a reality, a very sad reality of our society. One of the best ways to combat that is through activation, and that's what will ultimately be achieved in this area. The developers are progressing towards that goal, and whilst I understand that the neighbours would like this to be perhaps halted, the decision has been taken. Much as I wish I could alleviate their concerns, my role here is to focus on the planning elements that require our discretion. And considering those elements, land use, height, fencing and parking, I support admin's recommendation. These aspects meet the objectives of the relevant policies.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this proposal or on this proposal? Councillor Wolf, do you want to say anything in conclusion? I'm going to put the proposal. All those in favour? That's passed. Thank you. And now we'll move on to item 10.1, outcome of advertising and adoption of stormwater drainage connections policy. Do we have a mover for this proposal? I have a mover. Okay, that's moved Councillor Hallett, seconded Councillor Castle. Councillor Hallett, is there anything you wish to say to this proposal?
No, I'm supportive of the policy. I am wondering if administration could comment on what's been raised about this idea of differentiating between commercial and residential properties.
Through Mayor Simon, the comment would be that the overall combination of extensive impervious areas on a commercial lot compared to a residential lot would be much more extensive. You have a bigger footprint, you have more paved areas rather than your standard residential single-storey building that has a lot more softfall.
Thank you. I guess I'm just curious about the level of nuance between different types of commercial properties that may end up having not as much hard stand, and I guess the application of that to whether that's a bit blunt.
Through Mesmon, no, it's not blunt. I suppose with your commercial properties, it could be multi-use properties, it could be multi-storey commercial properties as well. So the area, the footprint area would be a lot larger than, like I say, that the residential single-storey that would have more space for that could contain the stormwater.
Okay, is Councillor Castle? Does anyone else wish to speak to this proposal? I've got some questions, if that's okay. So a question came from the floor around those residents and ratepayers who have easements, drainage easements on their properties. Can I just get an indication of how that consultation is taking place, please?
Through the chair, I could probably address that. The policy that's presented to council isn't addressing the city's infrastructure underneath private property, addressing what the needs are in respect to properties in containing stormwater on their property, whether that is residential or commercial, and it's also as a base position that no connections would be to the city's stormwater drainage unless there's exceptional circumstances for it to happen, and that may be due to geotechnical or hydrological reasons in respect to the land in which it is on. And just by way of note, to give a comparison of what is existing and what is proposed in respect to the scale of storm event. Currently for residential, the policy says a 1 in 5 storm event will be increasing to a 1 in 20. So the intensity of the storm is greater. So the requirement has therefore for on-site retention and storage has increased. The requirement in respect to commercial, which includes multi-unit residential development, has gone from 1 in 10 to a 1 in 100 storm event. So again, the extent of the requirement to retain or have the capacity to retain stormwater on a site has increased significantly.
So I know that there's been some confusion in some of the public commentary around this, that people have misunderstood the change in the figures to say that we're actually going in the opposite direction to which we are. So I know there was a concern saying that it's going to be easier to flood and that we're reducing those. And I just wanted to make that really clear that what this is doing is it's actually increasing the amount of water which is expected to be able to be kept on site. And I want to say how much I support going in that direction for both residential and commercial developments, because with the effects of climate change, we are going to see more and more catastrophic weather events, and flooding is one of the events which can occur. And as such, it's very important that we've got the capacity to make sure that we are mitigating the potential for flood damage. And also, the concern I have is that we need to ensure that, as far as possible, that developments are actually looking at needing to recharge within their own footprints and into the water table, so that we are not overloading the drainage system as a whole, which is also going to be another big challenge for us with climate change, and particularly with the rising river levels. So I think it's going in the right direction. I'm still concerned that maybe as we look at this policy moving forward, that where we might have a residential development that has even less green space on it than a commercial development, I don't want to have us making decisions simply based on how something is categorised, but actually what the built form itself looks like. So I think that's a level of sophistication moving forward that we should be keeping an eye on. How is it actually working in practice? But I do think that overall this policy is going in the right direction, because we need to be making sure that our policies can keep up with the increased risk of extreme weather events. Okay, any closing comments in relation to this item? Okay, I'm going to put it. All those in favour? Okay, that's passed by everyone. Thank you. So the next item is 5 as 9.3, advertising of draft Auckland Street Character Area Guidelines. Do I have a mover for this? Moved Councillor Castle, seconded by Councillor Wolf. Councillor Castle, do you wish to speak to this?
Thank you. There was a bit of discussion about this at the briefing, and I suppose there was some concern raised in the chamber about the level of support that seemed to be declining throughout the process. While I note those numbers and they do indicate a downward trend, I think we have an obligation to see the process through to its conclusion. I don't make any assumptions about what the outcome of this consultation might be once there is a fulsome effort to get lots of responses from administration. And I'm really interested to see what the community's opinion is around the draft guidelines that have been formulated. It's a necessary step of the process of what can be a bit drawn out to go through an initial nomination and then an indication of what might form part of the guidelines and then an indication of how people feel about those draft guidelines. But I think it's important for us to test that with the community and see what their appetite is. Although we know in practice a lot of these guidelines or these nominations for character guidelines arise after a particular application at council that can stir up some interest and some emotions in the area, I don't believe that our investigation and our pursuit of the guidelines should rest solely on whether people are still happy or unhappy about the outcome of any one particular property or development application. So I think it's important that we've heard a desire from the community to investigate this, to see what they think of what the draft that we've come up with, and then obviously when it comes back to council we can consider what to do next.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. I concur with all of the comments by Councillor Castle and think it's only appropriate that we move forward with this process.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Warner.
Thank you. I was one of the people who did voice my concerns about the how this was tracking with the neighbourhood, and I would just like to thank the community members who have been in touch to address those concerns and to reassure me that they are quite confident that the locality is keen to pursue this, and I support this and would love to see what we get from this. So thank you to everyone for getting back to us.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Okay, Councillor Castle, do you want to say anything in conclusion? Okay, I'm going to put the item. All those in favour? Okay, that's passed unanimously. Thank you. So the next item is number 9, Baker Avenue, Perth, change of use from single house to single house and unlisted use. Do we have a mover for this proposal? Moved Councillor Castle. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Warner. Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor. What we have here with this item is a consideration of whether to extend the approval for a small concert venue and recording studio. I have visited the site on 2 occasions, once in 2019 and once yesterday, and I think most people will agree it's a very cleverly designed and beautiful venue, and it has been well thought of to manage the sound from the studio and the outdoor area. It would appear on balance from what we've seen that the use of the property has been working well since its approval. So I want to talk a bit about the purpose of the time-limited approval that we considered in 2019. This was essentially put in place to test or trial the impact of the use on the surrounding area. It's not uncommon where there's a new use or where council might not be sure what the impact might be. And in this case, I'm satisfied that Centre Stage has managed the impact of the current approval on the community well. I've seen the measures that they've taken to mitigate noise from the patrons coming and going. I think it's fair to say that I probably would be surprised if anyone on council has any concern with the noise coming from the studio itself. There is nothing going in or out of that studio, and that's not going to have an impact on the surrounding area. But there is a concern and a consideration about any noise that happens outside of the studio, and that's when patrons are coming and going. When I considered this application in 2019, the time of the operation was the time limit, or the hours of operation, was an important factor. And I think we settled on 10 p.m. at the time because it aligns with the other venues in the area. And it is part of how we strike that balance between having a commercial venue in a residential area. I believed then and I believe now that 10 p.m. is appropriate for that. I also considered then and considered now the context of the property, which includes its inner city location and proximity to venues such as the Brisbane Hotel and HBF Stadium. I don't believe or share the concerns that this creates a precedent for other areas. This consideration for an application like this will always be site-specific and always take into account the very particular context of where the property is located. So the one concern that I do have with this proposal before us today is the request to extend the hours of operation until 11 p.m. I think we are looking to try and get that balance right between commercial and residential. And for me, 11 p.m. just tips that balance a little bit too far. I have asked for a few amendments to be prepared. I'm foreshadowing that I would like to move the amendment on the green, which essentially removes the 11 p.m. extension, but grants the approval in perpetuity. So I will let other councillors speak before I seek to move that, and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Okay, so that has been foreshadowed as a proposal, as an amendment potentially being put at a later time of the meeting. Thank you. Councillor Warner.
Our strategic community plan envisions a vibrant city driven by innovative efforts and a council committed to progress. Additionally, our arts plan seeks to embed creativity into every facet of our work, positioning the City of Vincent as the arts capital of Perth. These key objectives must guide our decisions. In my view, the proposal aligns positively with these goals. I've also considered the recommendation from administration, which supports the approval based on the evidence gathered and the trial period that has showed no breaches or complaints. There are two key areas here that require council's discretion: land use and the non-residential parking policy. Centre Stage is both a residence and a music venue. It's located on a street that includes the Aboriginal Catholic Ministry, home businesses, and a public open space used by a local primary school and community. This is not a quiet suburban street, but rather an area where students gather, local sports clubs train, and community events take place. Comparisons to other streets in North Perth have been made, and I find no valid parallel between Baker Avenue and the ones that have been suggested. I also believe that this does not set a precedence, as each application is considered on its own merit. Regarding the parking policy, 2 car bays are provided in line with the current approval, and a robust parking management plan is in place. This plan encourages visitors to use public parking at the Brisbane Hotel, which is across the park, and includes the deployment of a staff member at every event to manage parking, directing cars away from private verges and ensuring taxis and ride shares do not linger. This has been successfully executed throughout the trial. Another critical factor for consideration is, of course, community feedback. No complaints were registered during the trial, and aside from one household, there is support that's been shown from this week from all the other applicants, all the other residents on the street. We must focus on the relevant considerations here, which are zoning and parking issues. The liquor licensing, the number of toilets, and similar concerns are not within the scope of this decision. The allegation of after parties in the backyard can be dismissed by one visit to the site if you see there is actually no backyard to participate in with an after party. In essence, Mr. Mondier was granted approval to create this space with very reasonable expectation that if the trial period was successful, he could continue. He has demonstrated compliance, even during some of the most challenging times for local events with COVID, and he has met all the criteria. Restrict him now, either by imposing another trial period or halting his progress altogether, would be, quite frankly, unjust. This would be also against professional advice of our administration team and our strategic community plan, and I support admin's recommendation to approve this application.
Does any other councillor wish to speak to this item? Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. I guess one of the challenges for me is that despite that there's positive support across the street, when we talk about stakeholder feedback, we also need to think about proximity and most impact. And so I think the immediate neighbours also have, the right to articulate their concerns. For me, I was here when we first approved it. Beautiful space. That's not unquestioned. That's not actually part of this decision. But I think for me, where I struggle a little bit with what's proposed here, similar to Councillor Castle, is that there was a trial with particular conditions, and that seems to have gone well. And so we're looking at extending the time. But at the same time as that, we're looking to intensify use, both in terms of extending hours and then also the increased day patronage. And so for me, I'm not comfortable with both of those. And so I'm keen to explore the proposed amendment from Councillor Castle, because for me, I think it's about one or the other. We change the intensity of use, potential impact on amenity, and test that through a trial, which I suspect is not particularly of interest to the applicant, or we maintain, I guess, the what's been tested, and then look at extending the time for that. Thanks.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. Commercial uses in residential zones are never, ever easy applications, so I really appreciate the residents and community members who have come out to have their say. I do hear the concerns from the studio's direct neighbours and family, and also the voices of support from other residents and community members. Thank you to the applicants for the opportunity to undertake the site visit yesterday. The site visit did allow us to hear about the investment and the thorough process undertaken originally to operationalise Centre Stage. throughout the trial period in compliance with council and other requirements. We saw the significant contribution that it makes to the arts and to the community. And it was really useful, particularly in the context of this application, to see the mitigation measures in place to reduce the impact on residents and neighbours. On balance, I'm broadly supportive of the officer's recommendation, and that's in the context of this being of an inner city site context, and particularly in the context of those measures to mitigate impact on neighbours. And those are the physical measures that we've seen at the studio, as well as the conditions that seek to reduce impact as well. That said, I would be open to further discussion around hours of operation and those finishing times in regards to the impact of patrons coming in and out of the studio late at night.
Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Mayor Zamon. Want to start by acknowledging and visiting the space yesterday. What a unique space for the people in our community that do very much love the type of the music and the art service. I think it's particularly unique and is appealing to a section of our community. Through visiting and reading the reports, I am very much satisfied around the sound inside the studio not coming out, and satisfied about the parking. I want to acknowledge that the trial measures do seem to have been met, and that the venue management plan does seem to be working. The two areas of concern to me, not dissimilar to Councillor Hallett, that the parameters that we're seeking to approve are different from that was part of the trial. And I am concerned about what it does mean in terms of in perpetuity, particularly less of a reflection on the current operation, but what it more means in the future. And would be open to the idea of a 10 p.m. Wrap-up time, in acknowledgement that it is very much in that residential area and it does support striking a balance. So thank you.
Councillor Alexander.
Well, firstly, I'm surprised that we're suggesting that, basically a concert venue goes ahead in a residential area. So I'm concerned about that. But also, when I read the papers, there's a great complexity to, an 18-month agreement to start. And then it couldn't start for COVID or whatever reason. It couldn't be started. And I actually think there's a lot of discussion to be had by the council before we go either way with this exercise. I think there's a lot to be discussed before you completely rule it out or completely rule it in. So I'm very concerned about there hasn't been enough discussion amongst councillors and the administration to examine some of the things that are purported to be happening or have happened or haven't happened. And I think some of those need to be tested. And, I don't think, I don't feel ready to make a decision. So, I think it should be deferred.
Councillor LaFontaine.
Thank you, Mayor Zamon. I would agree with some of the concerns expressed in the gallery with this one. I sympathise with the neighbours adjacent to this and who object to a commercial venture on a residential house within a residential zone. I wouldn't want this next to me. And I appreciate the broader community support. However, this is not just a music studio. This is a commercial entertainment venture with the added concern mentioned of a liquor license and the possibility of attracting up to 100 customers next door. So in the interest of protecting the quiet enjoyment of neighbouring properties, I'm not supportive of this proposal. And I also want to make note that the entire city of Vincent is an inner city area. And I think we need to protect that amenity that we have on residential streets that are not commercial. So I would also be supportive of a deferral on this one. Thank you.
Councillor Castle, you indicated that you had a An amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would like to move the amendment on the green. We don't really have a screen that we can look at, but I think everyone's got in front of them. Essentially, at clause 2.2, it would be to delete 11 p.m. in the 3 places that it occurs and replace with 10 p.m. And in clause 2.4, to delete the words Sunday to Thursday and 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday and insert on any day of the week, all of which has the effect of limiting the operation until 10 p.m. at all times. If I could get a seconder.
Do we have a seconder? That's seconded by Councillor Hallett.
Thank you. Look, I spoke briefly before about why I had concerns about the extension of time. I think Councillor Hallett summed it up really well in that when we have a trial or a time-limited approval, we are testing the impact. What we're being asked to do in the substantive here is to approve an existing trial and then extend it, which we haven't actually tested. I agree that I think this is probably a more palatable outcome than to set a further time limit on the approval, and so I would seek to effectively extend the trial that we have been trialling, testing for 18 months or for longer than 18 months for this approval. I just want to make a note about the comments that have been made around the future operators of the site. This is always the case that an approval runs with the land and that we can't be guaranteed that the current operator will always be operating it. I do think there have been made a lot of assumptions about the type of patrons that use this property now and who might use it in the future and what they might be like and what noise they might generate. What I would say is that is exactly what the management plan is for. It is there to manage that with the approval as it runs. So I'm quite comfortable that that is capable of managing that should this property in the future attract a different type of music and a different type of patron. I don't think we can assume they will all be bad or worse than what we have.
Councillor Hallett. Does anyone else wish to speak on this amendment? Councillor Warner.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you, Councillor Castle, for your comments there about what would happen by approving this in perpetuity, and I really appreciate your comments about how there is ways to manage that with a management plan, and that's what that is in place to do. Whilst I was obviously supportive of the original recommendation, in the interests of compromise, I would be keen to support this. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a short comment to say I do support this. I don't support a further time limit given the process that we've been through, a further time limited approval given the process that we've already been through and that process having had no complaints. And I understand the operator seeking some certainty around the future of his business, but I do think that this earlier finish time is important to try and strike that balance and allow for the benefits and the vibrancy, but managing that within the residential zone. So I support the amendment.
As someone who lives in the area, I also want to say that I really do support the time limit being 10 o'clock. Anyone who lives in this area can't expect things to be quiet from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. like it is in other suburbs. But it is the case that come 10 p.m. We go from everything being loud and amazing to suddenly being much quieter, and that gives half an hour for crowds to disperse and for people to move on and the like. And I think that certainly limiting anything like this to 10 o'clock is consistent with the rest of the area and people's expectations. So I think that that's a positive amendment. Does anyone else wish to speak on this? Councillor Castle, do you want to say anything? Okay, so I'm going to put the amendment. All those in favour? Against? Okay, so against is Councillor Alexander and Councillor LaFontaine. So we now have in front of us an amended motion. There were two comments made. Someone talked about a potential amendment around deferral, and someone talked about a potential amendment around a limitation. But if nobody's moving any further amendments, I will put the amended proposal. Okay, but before I do that, I'm going to go back to the original mover of the motion who doesn't wish to speak. Okay, so we now have the amended proposal in front of us. All those in favour? Against? Okay, that's Councillor Alexander and Councillor LaFontaine against. Okay, thank you. So now we move on to the next proposal, which is 9.4, the outcome of advertising and adoption of local planning policy development guidelines for heritage places. And Councillor Alexander, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the chamber, please. We will call you as soon as this item is finished. So don't go far. Okay, Councillor Wolf, you would you like to move this proposal? Okay, do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Greer. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Just some brief comments on this one. I certainly appreciate there's been lots of thought and lots of effort that's gone into distilling some very complex information and adding diagrams into this one to improve readability. But it's still quite a technically dense read. And that's a reflection on the nature of the topic. As I mentioned last week, having had a look at some different iterations of this from other councils across Australia, it's a technically dense read across all of those councils as well. But my request on this one is that we could just clearly signpost somewhere outside the policy that support is available from the planning team to discuss application of this policy to people's individual circumstances and just help them navigate through this regulatory and policy framework. So I'll leave it with administration to decide where that might work best, to be it on the website or on social media or otherwise. But I think it will go far to help make this document a bit more accessible. Thanks.
Councillor Greer, did you wish to say anything? Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Okay then, so I'm going to put the item. All those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you unanimously. And so if someone can please bring Councillor Alexander back in. Where's he gone? There he is. Okay then, so now we move to 13.1, beg your pardon. Now we move to 12.1, consideration of authorisations associated with land management. And this does require an absolute majority decision. Okay, would anyone like to move this item? Moved by Councillor Wolf and seconded by Councillor Greer. And Councillor Wolf, do you wish to say anything? We do have to put this independently because it does require an absolute majority. Does anyone wish to speak to this item? I'm going to put the item. All those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. So then we get to 13.1. What do you... Okay, so as a presiding member, I don't usually get the opportunity to move motions. I would like to take the opportunity now to move a notice of motion. And so I'd like to move item 13.1, notice of motion, rodenticide use. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hallett. Okay, so thank you very much, members, for letting me put this motion. I note that the City of Vincent has already done quite a bit of work trying to deal with the issue of rodenticide and secondary poisonings. It is a very big concern for our wildlife, in particular for birds of prey like owls. We do have quite a number of owls in the city of Vincent, and I'm concerned to make sure that we continue to have as many as we possibly can. But this is a concern in terms of the risk that it does pose to wildlife. But I'm also really concerned about the impact on dogs, on pets, because of course we know that dying rats will make their way into backyards and the like, and can potentially be eaten by a pet dog or potentially a pet cat, although ideally your cat has been safely contained within your household and so is not going to be at risk of eating any rats that have been poisoned. But we are concerned to make sure that we can always look to improve, to see what we can do even better in this space. So one of the things that we need to do is to write to Walga to find out where things have progressed. I suspect it's not really high on the agenda at the moment, but it's always a good idea to put that on the agenda. And also has been support within the administration to the suggestion that we'd run more community education around the importance of not having second generation rodenticides used within the city of Vincent. So there's a number of things that have been outlined in terms of what can be done. I want to thank BirdLife Australia, who have been doing some really important advocacy around this, trying to raise awareness and trying to ensure that councils across the board are taking a more proactive role in terms of trying to address this. What we do need to note is that restrictions on the sale and use of second generation anticoagulant rodenticides actually falls within the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority, and they are undertaking a review. We won't know what the nature of that review is going to be until the end of this year or sometime in 2025. But I think that it's important that as local councils we at least do what we can to play our part to try to address this. We've already got enough of a problem with our local wildlife having reduced habitat. The last thing we need to be doing is contributing to the problem even further by having such serious poisons out there, which is going to take even more wildlife out with it than is intended. So please, I would ask that you are supportive of this motion. I believe it's in line with the expectations of our community, and I think that we can be just one council that joins many other councils trying to improve what we're doing in this space, acknowledging that we've already made steps in this direction. This is just making sure that we're keeping it on the agenda and taking the action a little bit further. Councillor Hallett, is there anything you wish to say?
Just quickly, I was completely unaware of this until a couple of years ago when a resident contacted me, and when I asked the question of admin, it was really pleasing to see that admin was already doing stuff. And so I think for me, this notice of motion is important because it's about extending what we have done in terms of getting our house in order, and now how do we push out and have influence and advocate outwards to have a broader impact. So fully support. Thanks.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for preparing this very thorough motion. I was so pleased to see it because it's an issue of such great importance to our council administration and to our residents who have been active around this issue. It is absolutely heartbreaking to see the impact that these rodenticides have on our wildlife and on our owls, who not only get sick from the poisoning and can pass away, but it can make it more dangerous for them in terms of being hit by cars more often. One of the reasons I just wanted to point out that this growing owl-friendly council movement has been growing across WA is because of the woeful inaction of the authority, the Australian Pesticides and Veterinary Medicines Authority. But this Commonwealth body has issued review after review after review into the safety of these rodenticides, and they have always resulted in either inaction or further reviews. So we've got people within the community who are consistently preparing submissions diligently and within the timeframes just for nothing to be done. And I heard from an academic expert recently that when the authority was instructed to clear its books of long-standing items under review, this particular rodenticide didn't make the cut because it had been on the books for 18 years and not the 20 years that was the required bar. So I really hope that the actions by our council and other WA councils put pressure on the authority to act, but I also hope that it puts pressure on retailers. So we know that these rodenticides are so dangerous and can cause harm to our wildlife, but at the same time, they're cheaply and readily available at local hardware stores. And instead of waiting for the authority to eventually regulate, there's nothing stopping retailers like Bunnings, who are well aware of this issue, to take steps now. So things like simple signage that they can put up around these products that might educate consumers about their risks. So I'm really pleased with this action, and I hope it does put pressure on those retailers. Also note there, BirdLife Australia, the work that BirdLife WA, BirdLife Australia and our friendly Margaret River has been doing in this space, who've been really active. And I hope, assuming this is passed, that administration does continue to engage with BirdLife WA and our friendly Margaret River. And hopefully we can get a few of the bumper stickers saying our friendly Vincent, like they've got down in Margaret River as well.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Warner.
Thank you for bringing this forward. I particularly just want to comment on the request to basically provide fact sheets for the community and deliver a communications campaign and provide information. I hadn't looked at this until just a few minutes ago, and just looking at FGAR versus SGAR. I had no idea what that was. So I've learned something now, the difference and the importance of actually being aware of what that difference is. So I'm really encouraged that if I can learn something tonight, if we can keep passing that education on to the community, that could actually have a positive impact. So thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Alexander.
Sorry, I was aware that the City of Vincent had taken some steps not to use it themselves. Certainly support, a wider information policy to ensure our residents and ratepayers are not using it. But also, there's a number of chemicals that we might want to follow up with that countries like China and the US are producing and selling to Australia, but not using themselves because they've got lawsuits against them and all sorts of things. So there's a range of chemicals that are being used in Australia that other countries won't use. So perhaps as a follow-up to this exercise, we might look at what some of those are.
Would anyone else like to say anything in relation to this motion? Okay. Thank you very much for your supportive comments in relation to this. As I say, Vincent has already been doing good work on this, and this, as I see it, is just the next step in order to try to to raise awareness within the community. And if this motion is to be passed, it means that once again we follow up with WALGA. And I certainly agree with the comments by Councillor Wolf that we need to just be putting pressure on the actual decision makers. It's very disappointing that this has been going on for so long. We don't need our wildlife under threat, and nor do we need our dogs under threat. So I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so there being no further business to conduct, I thank all those people who've been in attendance and all those people who are watching on the live stream, and I close the meeting at 8:03. Thank you. Wendy, can you